Okay, that should be me. Put some headphones on just in case anyway. There you go. Okay. Wireless headphones are great, but they always need charging. Okay. So today's going to be, ironically, a little bit of review, a little bit of planning, and a little bit of coding. If we can get to that piece specifically. We might just be tightening some things up today. I do want to merge some PRs. Okay. Poem guy. Hello. How you doing? I am better each day. It is huh. Today's going to be a little bit difficult because I did create some PRs for the feature that I'm about to just verify. And I do want to give my teammates a chance to do a little review. Failed to get configuration from console. Okay, so I keep hitting this one. So this is a problem of when I start up Docker, up console. I cannot read that at all. The Kafka configuration doesn't import, so then when the system starts up, it's got no Kafka configuration there, so it all goes bleh. So we're back on Liquid Sky, back on this development. Knocking something there. So before I took my break, I was working on adding the concept of dependent planning items. So if you have a planning item and you have a you have a need to order the planning items, then there you go, it's starting now. Okay. Did I stop that running? I did. Then at least presenting the indication that you do have some dependencies on other things. It's not perfect. It's not a surefire system, but it does get us into that. Why can't you be reached? Oh, there we go. Now I'll be there. Okay. So we sign in, and I need a loading screen. It's actually loading right this second. It's actually signed me in, and now it's just taking its time. Okay, so there we go. One day soon I'll hook these up as well. So again, we're loading. Okay, so the concept is one of when we have a planning item we depend upon, we should see it, right? So that's what this is. So we're seeing that dependency-based planning item has a dependency on changes to planning items, right? Now, the problem I have with this design so far is I'm not sure the design quite fits with this layout, right? So I'm not sure what to do here. So I'm not going to change it yet. I'm hoping that, again, if I can find that person that has an eye for UI UX, they can come up with something that will allow me to deal with this. In Jira, this only shows when you're in the full view. And so when you click on an item and it shows the full screen, and then the planning item dependencies list below, or the story dependencies list below, and now you can click on them and navigate to them. It might be that showing it might be that showing the like a hover or a call out that gives you the information is enough. But again, because I have no full screen detail right this second, it doesn't work. So I think this is going to be enough for now, and again, hopefully, as we proceed through, people will have some feedback on this so we can understand what is the actual usage of this. But again, it's showing the status of those planning items, right? So if we're looking at this and these three have, the idea being that if we're looking at this from a planning perspective, that you wouldn't touch this one necessarily, or you might plan it, but you wouldn't actually start it until these three have been done. So, yeah. It's not the, so we have another issue as well. So if I remove this and save this, right? That planning item, for some reason, jumps all the way down here. No idea why. I do not know why the grid is ordering that way. But yeah, something is weird in the grid there. So yeah. So if I add to initiatives arrows, if we add a dependency based planning item, save that, notice that one. Now that's right at the bottom. It's got a dependency on that. Now it doesn't have the status for that, which is interesting, but that's fine. It will have it once it loads. But I don't know why this is now down there. So let's give that a bit of a quick search. Prime ng data view sorting edited. I've updated all the latest libraries, so there's no. It's something I'm doing weird with the data view, I would say. Yeah. I think I need to buy a new chair. This one's so uncomfortable. So let's go to planning items. No. Initiatives, planning components. Components, planning dashboard. Planning items. P table. Sort field review date. Mm. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure where to start looking there, so I'm not going to mess around with that because I think that's um, a whole challenge unto itself. And thank you very much for the follow. Appreciate it. So we have the goal. So when you create a new planning item, you have a title and a goal. There's no long-winded description to the goal. Dan, thank you very much for the raid. Welcome in. How was your stream? I'm sorry I've not been hanging out much in your streams of late. It's good learning about normal maps. Ooh, that's where yeah. That's something to do with an arrow. Uh, I think from a normal. That's how I think of it. This is why I don't do game dev. Um, yeah, how's the game coming along? I've had a couple of weeks kind of off with surgery and stuff. Um, and last week I kind of slowly returned back into the whole streaming thing, but I haven't really been sat at the computer much. So how's it going? I had that detour working with Sinisperi, which didn't work, so I'm back to my game. Okay. Okay. Wasn't a waste of time because I learned a lot of interesting things. Yeah, I mean, forgive me that these are different sizes. Um, as long as you learn something, that's key. I don't mind detours. Last week we did some bot stuff. I do the developers that stream stuff, which gives me some different insights. I do this. I'm happily picking up other things all the time. So, but that's cool. Well, welcome in. Anyone join with Dan? I am not developing cool game things. I am working currently on my project management and planning software. This is my own software built to solve the problems as I see them in software development and project management. Right now, I'm reviewing the concept of dependent planning items, which is kind of kicking me in the butt a little bit because this grid there's something wrong with this grid. This concept of having a planning item that I depend upon, so that I don't go and plan the wrong things. Thank you, Online. So I've been developing this for about a year and a half. So yeah, we're just reviewing this. So yeah, when you set up a new planning item, you can set any dependencies that it has. You can search for those things, right? Ultimately, planning items will have an identifier of some form, so it'll be a little easy to identify one based upon its title alone. Planning item has a title and a goal. That goal is a free text field, but it's more aimed at focus on what you're trying to achieve with this planning item, so that the planning item the focus should be on gathering the requirements, right? Not on the actual long-winded description, right? There might be attachments, there might be documents attached to this to explain things, but really trying to focus on gathering the requirements first, right? What do you want from this planning? And the dependencies are a way to make sure that you don't go and plan something when there's other things waiting. So if you have dependencies, then this one shouldn't be, being planned because the others are. Yeah. Yeah. So that is what I am working on. So today, that's deep drop. Today I am going to kind of conceptualize estimation and identify what it is, where I want to put it, because I still have this branch outstanding, and I want to give my colleagues that I've asked to join me on this project some time to at least see if they want to review the PRs. I'm not expecting them to review the PRs necessarily. I will merge them eventually. However, I don't want to just 24 hours later just go, yeah, it's merged, it's fine. So, estimation. We are terrible at estimation. Now, what I'm doing different with this project is I am building this so that the planning is the focus. The work is spawned from the planning, right? So the goal is not to estimate what is planned, but well, that sounds silly. I have a requirement. This requirement added to show that changes are flowing properly. So let me create a more meaningful planning item, right? So let's say we have allow estimation of tasks, right? The goal is we should be able to, as a product manager, I want to be able to see the estimation of right. So from a product management perspective, I want to see this planning item. I want to see it figured out, and I want to see what the estimation looks like on the entire planning item. So a planning item is more akin to an epic as such, mixed with a story. Assigned to Jeffrey. Assign projects. Planning. UI. That's fine. Review date. So the review date is the concept of when do I need to check back in on this thing? And the initiative, we have no initiative right this second. So we save that. This is my janky behavior that I'm talking about, right? So for some reason that does that, and then that jumps back up to the top, and I have no idea why. Okay, so as a product manager, I want to see the estimation of work involved in a planning item. So now we have requirements, right? Tasks should be estimable. Estimable, is that the right word? No. I think I want estimatable, right? Capable of being estimated. Estimatable. That doesn't read right. But anyway. If you have any questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, you're more than welcome to ask. I'm happy to detour. I'm happy to go into things in more detail. I'm happy to be pushed on the concepts I'm presenting. can't always say I'll respond in what might seem like the best way, but I always do try and take any feedback and even criticism as best as I can. Tasks should be estimatable. As a developer, as a product manager, it is helpful to be able to see the effort given task to need. Whether we use points or time, a number, scale. Yes, Mediator going commercial. And hello, Sally. Yeah, Mediator, Mass Transit, and what was the other one? There's another one as well. I mean, commercial licensing, if they can provide the support for them, perfectly fine. I get it. Mass transit is something I actually rely upon in Liquid Sky, so that's going to be an interesting challenge for me. I can develop with it. There's no problem with development. But if I was to go commercial, it's obviously now something that I have to factor in as a cost. Whether I should. I mean, I'm already looking at if when I decide to put this up for real usage, Kafka is still going to be a cost, right? I rely heavily on Kafka, and I'm going to have to figure that out as well. That is not a cheap cost either. Yeah, and I get it. You know, these projects are the backbone of a lot of software. You know, we've kind of jumped that open source, you know, for the good of everyone sort of shark, I suppose. And now it's like, oh wow, these things actually take maintenance and time, and you know, people don't just run with them and maintain them themselves and fix the problems and then commit them back to the solution. Yeah. So yeah. So as a product manager, it is helpful to be able to see the effort the developers expect a given task to need. Whether we use points or time, a number scale is used to represent this effort. I should be able to a task before it is going to the maintainer. He felt he wanted income from the mediator and auto mapper. Yeah. So Jimmy Bogard is responsible for a lot of software. Automapper and Mediator are big libraries that are well used. Automapper specifically. He's a consultant, and he was trying to fit it in with his consultancy. And if he's got to take any time off consultancy to support those projects because people are asking for things and expect changes and patches and whatnot, I don't see any problem with him getting paid. It's one reason I don't do OSS development, and I feel Shambo, by the way. Seems like more work after work, but I think that's like in concept, open source software is great, but at a point it takes off. You've got to decide whether you know. You, I think open source software works best for like little things, you know, little libraries that just kind of don't do very much, but are easily contributed to. They have the same vision. People expect the same things from it. It solves the problem. Things like Automapper, there's all sorts of different ways people want to use it. There's different ways people expect it to work. There's performance issues if you map it, if you're mapping massive objects, which I personally think is a code smell, then it's useful. Mediator again, it's not difficult to build your own version of Mediator, as long as you're willing to do some a little of the harder code. We built many on stream. We built 2 mediators on stream. One supported DI. Might not be the fastest, but it'll solve the problem. And I've built one in production, and it works perfectly fine to support hundreds of users. It's perfectly fast enough. So you can build those things. It's just, again, if it exists, why do that? But open source is challenging. So maybe he's putting the paywall in front of it to make sure that only the most demanding of users have a path. And he isn't going to be out of pocket for doing it. Yeah, Mediator. Not Mediator, which I'm using. Mediator. If Mediator gets a paywall as well, I'm building my own. I'm not, because mass transit is something that I want to use. I think it helps abstract RabbitMQ and it gives me that messaging bus properly. So mass transit stays in Liquid Sky. However, if Mediator, the library I'm now using, because I moved away from Mediator, was to go pay, I would shift and build my own. For what I'm using, it's not a difficult problem to solve. So, yeah. I should be able to edit the task before it is included in a sprint. And put Automapper does. Automapper also went paywall. Mediator and Automapper, both from Jimmy Bogard, they both went pay. You have to look. I don't use Automapper, so it might be just an annual support fee so you have access to him. Let's have a look. That's been this topic of conversation. Let's have a look. Automapper. Automapper, Mediator, and Mass Transit. Some of the biggest open source libraries there are. Commercial model. He's explaining why his OSS contributions dipped off after he became his own consultant. Yeah. Yeah. Nothing will change. I'll still be as unresponsive on GitHub issues, and I just pushed out a couple of releases of any existing work. So again, yeah, he's trying to make sure that he can pay for the time he's using, because he's obviously his career, he's not paid for this. Prior to 2020, he was in a consultancy that actually paid him to maintain these things. So even though they were open source projects, his consultancy gave him time to support and pay, right? So they were supporting the open source project. So with a sponsor, that's fine. But since 2020, when he went to be his own consultant, he has no sponsor. So no one's paying him for the time to develop Automapper or Mediator. So he's trying to cover that time, which is fair. I don't have an issue with it. Yeah, so he's talking about how to do it. So he's basically trying to figure out what that looks like. And both of them posted them within days. Chris Patterson, primary maintainer of mass transit. Him and Drew, someone started that years ago. But they're looking to add support onto the end of it, right? So yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't from open source stuff, I don't see it going the way people initially dreamt of when open source was conceived, in terms of everyone works on it, everyone uses it, everyone contributes back into it. I think it's more, hey, we need this, and they see it as a feature pipeline to pass on requirements. I wouldn't call us a happy user of Automapper. Again, I've avoided Automapper wherever possible. I really do feel that it's kind of a smell in normal code. I think if you're doing reporting and stuff, Automapper probably does make a bit more sense, because you'd be doing bigger objects. But in regular code, I think Automapper is an indicator that you've probably got, yeah, a bit too much going on in your data. Like I say, reporting, I can kind of see, because you need data consolidated and you might want to put that into objects and whatever. You're not necessarily running everything off SQL there, but other than reporting, I don't see why. A little task. I should not task once it is included in a sprint. That's a decision I'm making right now, right? I'm not going to put the ability to edit a task. You should not be able to edit the estimation of the task once it's included in a sprint. So yeah, the requirements are used to do that. Let's edit that a second. I should not. There, that was better. All right. So to do that, we're going to need to and the purpose of breaking down tasks and estimating tasks is to allow the developers to be more accurate, because we are terrible at estimation. I'm not going to put the word points or hours or days after these. They are just a number. What estimate you use is up to you. It's up to you to be consistent as a team. I think I might stick with that for quite a while as well. I'm not going to say points. I'm going to say estimation, and leave it completely down to you. If you want to put 13.2 in there, I'll let you put 13.2 in there. If you want to put 20, you can put 20. It means something to the team. It does not mean anything to me. But when it comes time to reporting and whatnot, that's when it'll show. So the goal is to let the tasks be estimated, not the requirement, because I don't want to point at the story level. I want to point at the task level, or estimate. Sorry, I got to be careful. Yeah, I will do that. Yeah. And I'm hoping, my hope is that by breaking the task down, allowing the task to be broken down into technical boundaries rather than story-based boundaries, that the burn down will show more natural and it will show more continued progress. Right. I know they're not popular and it is a reporting thing, but I think what it'll show is true progress rather than this story's been sat there for 3 days. Right. So yeah, if we break down the tasks and estimate the tasks, added a screen, added a way to get similar reporting but differently. Not quite sure I follow that one. But again, I believe when we point at the story level, so as this stands right now, right, this is essentially what a story would be, and now the developers will have to go off and do all the pieces. Whereas I'm going to create a task, and one of those tasks is to get the UI for editing in there. And when I get the UI for editing, get the backend pieces in for that, get the information publishing, so start to determine what this looks like. Like pull the PR data and use that for a burn down chart. I don't know, I have no idea, something innovation. I mean, so what my vision is here is basically once these are tasked out, I'd show a number here, right? So we estimate this at a 11, right? This number here isn't going to follow that Fibonacci sequence because the tasks, if I was doing pointing. So that'll be the sum total of the tasks on it, right? I might show progress towards that, right? I might show, well, you've done 50% of them. So, we've done 50%, we've made 50% progress on this thing. So you can see at a glance where that individual planning item stands. Burn down charts and stuff show stalls in the process. So with more granular tasking, stalls should become more apparent, not less apparent, right? Because there's obviously a lot of context that goes if a story gets stuck. Did it get stuck in QA? Did it get stuck because we were talking about it for days? What really held that up? And the team knows. Like using a measure that's meant for the future to estimate how much you can do in the future is kind of not great. Well, so one of my plans here is basically over time, we look at the planning items, we look at the tasks and the sizes. And then when we talk about initiatives, obviously we have these dates on initiatives, and an initiative is going to contain multiple planning items. The goal would be to get a little bit more predictive on that, right? So we can start to say, well, historically, you've not achieved, you've achieved this number of points, or this estimated effort in, 3.5 weeks. Therefore, this one's off schedule. It's at risk because we don't feel that we've done that historically. And again, more granular tasking should provide some deeper insights there. Like using a measure that's if planning items kind of equal epics, having the epics not too big and giving feedback when they are would be a lot of value add. So in terms of the way that these are laid out, a planning item is closest to an epic, but I feel that it really does resemble I didn't know how to read it, that's all. I knew what it meant, but yeah. So yeah, I want to play with this a little bit more. I'd love to have some product management people, once I get this version onto the server, I'd love to have some product management people take a look and see how they feel about the breakdown. And if it's possible and the challenges they have. From a team perspective, I think this will probably allow the teams to, like, is anyone happy with the burn down charts? Well, I don't. Again, I think burn down charts are, what's the word? Not prescriptive. Burn down charts are a measure of your consistency as a team and your a good burn down chart measures not only the consistency of the team, it also measures the flow of requirements and the can't think of the words. But ultimately, I don't think I think a burn down chart is more of a retrospective component than it is of anything to do with future prediction. It tells you whether you've tuned the system enough. Again, even in this system, if you look at it from a retrospective perspective, it's very useful. Right? Did we hit a block? Did something get stuck? Why did it get stuck? Can we avoid getting stuck there? It measures something I'm not convinced it does more harm than good, especially if strictly followed. Well, again, it's a tool to try and give you a visualization of what you did. Right? So if I test this out, right? So provide estimation field on task. An estimation field should appear on the edit form for the task when in the backlog. Now, this requires me as a developer to go off, right? I should be planning this out. I should be thinking through this, right? So the tasks in the backlog, I have the detail panel, right? So I can edit in here, right? In the boards, I have the task edit. So I don't have distinct edits. So I'm not going to run the risk of including that. An estimation field should appear on the edit form for the task when in the backlog. The field should be numeric, should accept a decimal. So 2 places. Now, that's an interesting one because I shouldn't. That's not really defined in the planning items. That's something I should push back on as a story. But there you go. I need loading things all over the place, right? Update. Now, I'm not going to allow you to set the estimation at the time of tasking. So here, this adding the task, I'm not going to put estimation in there. I'm not going to encourage that behavior, right? You shouldn't be adding tasks and not thinking about them from an effort perspective. Update task with estimate on server side. Modify put endpoint to accept estimation decimal. Update task to setting estimation. We haven't got it on the database yet, so we're going to need some scripts. Estimation should be at the story level, in my opinion. Not in the way this is going to work. Again, I've seen too many times where the story, a task is closer to a story, yeah. But most people are going to think of the requirements and the planning item as a story. Again, story epic kind of blurs the lines with the system. Apex, hello, how you doing? So a task is estimatable. A task can be technical because I think it allows us to be clear about what this is the part. These are the parts that people kind of leave assumptions on, and then you get to that point where someone's like, "Well, did you think about this screen?" No, because we didn't add it into the story. Yeah. So this as a group of work will be estimatable. That's what I'm planning on. Modify, introduce estimation field to tasks. And tasks, by the way, is probably going to go away. I'm probably going to rename this work item of some form because there is a concept. So to your point, Dota, breaking these down could be done as tasks in there. So that is a discussion that I'm contemplating. I haven't made the change yet, but ultimately tasks becomes work item. Yeah. Because task also suggests that this is an entry and it's not. So work item, whatever. We'll talk about that. Update task to allow setting estimation. Provide estimation on integration message. All right. I wonder if all the options for devs include burn down charts like Azure boards, GitHub boards, Jira, etc. I'm not sure. Right. So again, show estimate when viewing task in the backlog in the hold on, that's not actually part of that requirement. It's kind of what market you're going for. Yeah, I mean, they'll all have some form of you have a tool based around tracking something, you're going to want to know things about that data. So there's going to be charts, or there's going to be boards, there's going to be something around there that tells you, are we doing good? So from this perspective, should be able to see the estimation. As a product manager, I want to see the estimation as a sum. Let's think about this. As far as planning going, epics need requirements. Requirements map to tasks that should be fairly understood, but the tasks themselves don't have to have a clear definition. So my goal is, as a product manager, I want to see the estimation of work involved in a plan item, right? So how do I get there? Well, I should be able to estimate tasks. That is a requirement, right? I should be able to set a task. It should be edited before it's included in a sprint, and I should be able to put a level of estimation on that task. I should not be able to edit a task once it is included in that sprint, right? So I should not be able to tasks estimation once it's included in the sprint, right? So I don't want to be able to change that estimation after it's been included in the sprint, right? The estimation is the estimation. It doesn't matter if you're accurate or not. You shouldn't be able to change that. A task, the clearer the definition for a task, again, that's up to the development team, right? Not the, that's interesting. Okay. That's because that's not reloaded. That's fine. Right. So provide estimation field on the task. An estimation field should appear on the edit form for the task in the backlog. The field should be numeric. This is the developer. This is the developers, right? The developers are saying, okay, here's what we need. And if they need to refer to it, here's the requirement that spawned this task. Yeah. So the pointing is done before it goes in the sprint. Now I'm still contemplating how this screen works properly. I'm thinking that basically it's assigned to a team, not to a developer, from the tasks perspective, because the team knows that it's assigned to them, and then they're able to filter the team here, and we'll have priority. Makes it harder to compare planning items to each other beforehand. Why would you compare planning items? You can spend 6 months doing authentication or 3 months on feature A. So, workflow. Product management comes through and creates planning items, right? When they're ready, right, they move this ready for planning, right? Once it's ready for planning, God, I hate that. Hey, Apex. Why did that not move to the development team is able to go off and task the requirements, right? So that should be ready for planning. Oh, that's because it hasn't done the full cycle yet, right? And I'm not doing live updates. The development team now reads the requirements and adds the tasks that meet these requirements, right? So they're building these tasks out for the requirements that they see, right? So they're doing this. They're not estimating at this point. They're just tasking it out, right? The pointing or estimation is normally done based upon your feel for, is it more or less difficult than a set standard? Because they're tasking it. They're not looking at it from a pointing perspective or an estimation perspective. I've found it gets really messy if you're kind of talking through this stuff and trying to estimate it at the same time. Just from I mean, we could definitely discuss that. But just from a workflow perspective, I found it gets really messy if they're trying to do this and they try and estimate, right? Because they're focused on the estimation and not thinking through what they need to do. So anyway, the concept is you go through here, you task this out to meet the requirement. Back in here, this screen is not complete, obviously, but the concept is you go in here, you look at what you've said you'll do. Why is that not loading that? That is not funny. This is your requirement it's based off of. You shouldn't be comparing a planning item to another planning item to point or to estimate. But you should have an understanding of what it involves to do this piece, and you should be able to estimate that based upon past experience. Estimating at this point, when you are adding the tasks, I suppose considering I'm thinking of, so the product manager presents this. The product manager puts the requirement in front of the team. The team goes through and says, okay, well, we need to do this, and this, and this. I kind of see these as disconnected pieces. So the product manager sits down and describes what they're doing. The team goes and figures out what the tasks are. They use it from this screen because they've got reference of this. They've added any comments. I still see this as discussion. I don't want comments, I think. Well, the devs are involved in this piece, right? The devs are that's the purpose. That's why I'm doing this differently. Because, so to Apex's point, well, you kind of do know if you've done tasking properly and your estimations, regardless of whether they are time points or, you know, cycles around the moon, they know what they're tasking. I was thinking this would be no. Tasking is not team led. Team lead. The team lead might go off and talk and capture any comments, but they would not be adding tasks. The team would add the tasks. So, and again, this workflow, I think this screen changes again at some point. That's so I tend to get asked to add the task by myself and review them later with the team in a planning meeting. So yeah, that's the problem I'm trying to avoid, because if one person is tasking it out, they're focused on it in their perspective, right? They're focused on it in the way they tackle the problem. What I'm trying to encourage is the team to own. That's why I'm allowing tasking to be technical, right? So if you look at Jira, the general pattern is you create a story should be non-technical. You shouldn't be describing technical requirements in there. It should all be business. That's this disconnect, right? So the tasks, that still looks like a bad word. I probably typoed that somewhere. But anyway, the requirements are laid out by the product management team. They say, hey, here's what we want to see. A cycle of questions go through this, right? It's not just ready for planning. You might involve a team lead. You might talk about the technical challenges of doing this. You might have a conversation. I do want to try and capture discussion in here so that the team can review it. Meetings, I want a calendar in here so you can attend meetings or whatever. And also a catalog that meetings have happened regarding around this planning item, right? Especially in this world where we have AI creating notes and stuff, that would be very useful if you could go to a meeting and review the meeting notes. Product as a feature, product talks to team lead. Team lead has some meetings and figures out general scope. UI scopes on the screen to be built. Dev populates for stories enter sprint. Is that the process flow? Product talks to team lead. Team lead has some meetings and figures out general scope. Team lead should not be determining. Team lead should push back on initial requirements. Team lead should be saying, that's dumb, and avoiding the team being brought into a conversation that hasn't been vetted. The team lead should not be dictating what is done. The team should be doing that, right? So once this requirement has been vetted, once we are comfortable that these requirements make sense, like, don't forget, there could be 1 to a dozen requirements potentially if you want to go big on this, right? Well, that's what yeah. The CEO dictates what his team does. Scales beautifully. Yeah, it never goes wrong. But the team lead is then basically, or the lead developer in that case is basically um, kind of um, the representative of product at that point. They've asked some questions, they've gone back, they've maybe had conversations with developers, they've reviewed some of this stuff, they've gone over it asynchronously and validated these requirements. So when we sit down, the team is able to go through, and forgive workflow being a little bit on the poor side here, but that's bugging me. Why is that not loading? Anyway, I know. Feel this is exactly why I'm creating the software, right? But the team sits down and says, okay, here's what we need to do. We need to put a field on the form. They can go as deep or as shallow as they want to, and the field should be numeric, but should accept a decimal to 2 places. They're being clear about what that is. They've asked the question, they've verified that. Now, the likelihood is the requirement probably has that on it at that point, because the team lead's probably gone off and said, well, hold on, do you want to capture, how do we want to capture this, right? Now, in this instance, I'm building this with this. So my requirements on both sides are kind of technical. So I've got to kind of test this and try this multiple times, right? I got to work this workflow out. But the idea would be that the development team can put technical pieces in here. So if we go to this one, update task with estimate, introduce the estimation field to tasks. That's, don't forget you need to do the SQL migration. SQL, migration script and update create. That's a lot of updates. That's not good. Modify the put endpoint to accept the estimation as decimal. Update the update task to allow setting estimation. Provide estimation on integration event. If the team needs to be reminded, unit tests, right? They should be doing these things, and then provide estimation on the integration event. So this as a chunk of work can now be delivered and be part of a larger effort, but it can actually be its own commit, it could be its own piece, right? And up to the team how they break this down, but that's the point, right? The team is able to control the breakdown of the stories or the tasks or the work items to better represent their workflow, not fit it in the bounds of a story. Because we get in this case where we're like, is this story ready? Well, that piece is, so when can we release it? Because then you lose track of this thing, right? We often lose, this might last more than one sprint, but most of the work is done. And don't forget, the goal is as well to indicate QA tasks and stuff separately here, and DevOps tasks, so we know the pieces that are stuck out there. There's a lot of failure modes of agile development. A lot. Yeah. But it's not. There's a lot of failure modes of human beings trying to organize. All I'm trying to do is split I'm trying to split this slightly different than we do in Jira. And tools like Jira, right? I think, what's it called? There is a tool that's similar. I'd have to go back to my notes. One of the other product management tools does do something a little different to Jira, more akin to what I'm doing. But what I'm trying to do here is say, okay, well, the developers can go off and do the development part. They can break things down. And by allowing them to break things down the way they want, their estimations are probably going to be a little bit more accurate, right? Because they're going to be, the idea being that the developers sit down, they talk about this stuff, they know what's involved, and they can get rid of some of those hidden things, and they can document them. They don't have to worry about assuming them. Well, so I've been thinking through this as far as planning items, like here's what I want to plan, here's what I need to plan, etc. I think my initial version, right? Don't forget the current version of this. And again, if you're new to the stream and you have questions, thoughts, opinions on what you're seeing, please feel free to join in. I'm more than happy to accept other people's experiences and other people's understandings of this stuff. And I think the more the merrier, especially in something like this. So the current version of this has past due, current, and upcoming. This is PrimeNG. This is the original version, the first launch version. This is the current version of this software. This is PrimeNG with some tailwind for layout, etc. So, hi, Canny. So initiatives, Delta, initiatives roll up planning items. Initiatives allow that higher level view. So if you have an initiative around estimation, right, allowing estimation of tasks might be part one, but a planning item might be to, you know, show burn down charts or something like that, but it's all under the estimation initiative, right? So you might have different planning items. The concept is this, the total of these tasks is going to show up here as an estimation value, right? That's your total estimation value. So you'll be able to see at this level a total of all the requirements. And if you're doing planning far enough out, you can use it as a forecasting, right? Because again, if the developers are able to be more accurate, the developers will be able to be a little bit more honest about their tasking. They can break things down, and we can see, oh, this task, or this work item, I'm trying to figure out the wording. This task took 3 days, and we estimated it as a 1, and this other task took 3 days and estimated it as a 3. The team should be using that to reflect on and get more accurate over, and given enough time, then you'll be able to see, you know, we are going to miss our target on this initiative, or we're going to be close on this initiative, or we're going to have plenty of time based upon others, or we're likely to, right? So confidence levels. But trying to use it as a planning tool, right? That's the goal, right? Allow everyone to see. And Jira does have a lot of tools around this that we just don't see and use all the time. As developers, we often see, you know, the story pointing side of things. Yeah. Thank you for the follow-up, by the way, ABT. So to Apex's point, estimating here might not be a terrible idea. I think, again, the team is kind of, you know, going through and figuring out. They might actually say, okay, well, we know what that work involves. That's a 3. That's a, you know, that's half a day. Yeah. And I'm not joining 3 and half a day there. I'm saying that I'm going to put a number field on here deliberately to avoid any discussion right now of points versus hours estimations. That's up to the team. So it's just a number. So I'm going to use the word estimation, not points or hours. That way the organization has the choice, and the organization aligns on the score. And as long as the number is there, it doesn't matter whether you're saying it's 4 hours or 3 points. Yeah. Okay. So we had a requirement. Maybe need to put margins on the light dark mode button. I am not. So at this point, UI UX is not a big focus for me. This happened because I just moved this over from a previous iteration, and they aligned. This doesn't actually do anything right now. Right now, I'm focused on functionality. I'm looking to try and find someone who is very good at the UI UX side, so I can get an actual layout, but getting the features in there to kind of give people an idea of what it is I'm aiming at, so that if I find a UI UX person to help me create a good version of this, but I find that if I start messing around with margins and and whatnot, I start to end up with the rabbit hole of paddings and drives me crazy. Um, um, estimations should be visible. As a product manager, it is useful to be able to see the estimation of tasks. There's so much involved in this project. So this is Liquid Sky. This is the product I'm working on. It's a distributed application with a lot of moving parts. The client is just one piece of that. This has been in development since October, November 2023. So about 18 months. So a lot of technology to play with. So yeah, I don't. I get about 2 hours a day, Monday to Friday, to work on this on stream. But I do actually do a different project Mondays and Fridays on stream. It's useful to see the estimation of tasks, to understand expected effort. Should see a total for the tasks. And you're crushing it. It's come a long way since I started watching. We've got a lot done. Yeah. I definitely see the vision. I definitely don't have any doubts that it can help. I think there's a lot of things that I want to get done, and I am trying to not only is the ironic thing is get better at the planning aspect myself, because it's helped me understand some of my weaknesses, but also trying to figure out how to juggle and prioritize what needs to be in there to call this an actual product. We are working on, and I say we because I do have some assistance on this, we are working on putting a management backend in there so we can manage subscriptions. Subscription just being a concept to be able to turn on or off access to the product. Once this version goes live, anybody will be able to sign up to test it. But I also want to be able to disable malicious. No, this is not going to be open source. This is intended to be a product. That being said, there are components of it that are open source. My Kafka stuff is open source, and so I have an outbox implementation and a library wrapping Kafka to ease publishing and receive of Kafka events, and a mediator outbox that is open source. And if there's other components of the software that you see as I go that you feel would be helpful to be shared, I am more than happy to open them up a little bit. The general rule is, if you have any questions, thoughts, you want to dig into anything deeper in the code, and you have questions, there is a Discord. You're more than welcome to go and join there and ask any more probing questions. And also on stream, if you have any questions, I'm happy to show the code. But I feel, considering the size and scale of this, to open source it does not really do anything to show. I mean, we've got 92 Visual Studio projects in here, plus a Angular client application, plus console, Kafka, Mongo, Papercut, RabbitMQ, Redis, and SQL Server running to get this up and running. So as an open source project, it will be an absolute bear to manage. Yeah. But yeah, I'm always happy to sit down and chat if anybody wants that time. Also, we do often hang out in Discord if anybody is interested in a chat from time to time. Can't always say it'll be useful or productive, but we do hang out in Discord. You just got to say hi. Some people do drop in and out, and I don't want to assume. I think they might want to see what's on the screen. But yeah. Okay, should see a total for the tasks appear on. Now, me having no ability to do UI, UX mockups, ability being no talent to do it. No, I could go and try and figure it out in Paint or whatever, but it's just not worth adding. Obviously, I can attach screenshots and stuff here, so I could on the requirements panel. I'm doing this, by the way, in the wrong version of the software deliberately to highlight a planning item. Should see a total for the requirements appear in the planning items grid. You know what? We're going to avoid that one for now. We're going to avoid that for now. So, should see the individual estimation for the tasks. Right. Now, again, the point of estimating at this level, right? If we have QA and DevOps tasks, they have to estimate their tasks as well, right? How long or, how much effort do you feel this is? DevOps, often get away because they're operations based, but maybe a DevOps task is estimable, right? They understand, okay, here's what I don't know, here's what I do know. They can task this out as well for them and put an estimation value on that, right? So I think it's useful from that perspective because now an individual requirement has the estimation of multiple groups on it, right? So we will be introducing groups, and these tasks will be groupable by not only assigned to team. You could assign a single task to a different team, but there will be groups that it's involved in, so that you could actually highlight them differently. Because I've still yet to figure out fully what a sprint looks like, whether a sprint should or should not include QA and DevOps. That's still a challenge I even face day to day. So here, we might comment, showing the total, the estimation on the grid of planning items is only useful if we have completed. What if you go opinionated and only allow Kanban? It's just a list. You take that off the top. Good luck. Well, so it's one of the challenges I have with. So hold on. If it's only useful if we've completed tasking. Got to figure that part out. So why is that not loading the requirement? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Sprints make me think burnout over time. So as a developer, right, having this for a given time kind of makes sense. But what does complete mean, right? Complete means done by you, right? Does it mean so we end up with these columns like in QA, ready for QA, etc. And we move a task ready for QA and it sits there for a week because QA is backed up or busy. And now we miss the sprint because of that. So I don't feel that it's right to include that. However, when this is complete, I feel that other tasks should be enabled. And I think that QA and DevOps kind of are Kanban, right? And I'm still trying to figure out the specifics of that. But I think that it might be useful for this to kind of have a workflow that says, okay, well, when this task is complete, these other tasks are now valid, right? So they rely upon, or this work item, whatever, rely upon this work item. I mean, it kind of activates them. You hate another one with a customer. Oh, I'm sorry you were hurt. Yeah. Yeah. So I think allowing some form of triggering to say, okay, well, this is done by the development team. This task, having this task done means it's in place to do this, it's in place to do this, or whatever. It's ready for deployment. It's a branch, right? Because obviously we got to get to the whole GitHub integration or whatever, and have this understand what a PR is and all those sorts of fun things, right? But then if this activates other tasks, right? So can be activated by these tasks, then QA would then be alerted to the fact they've got something to do, right? Automatically by the fact that we've moved it to complete, it would trigger that. If that happens though, this can't just move back here. Oh crap, I missed something, right? So I've got to really think through that. But I do think that developers can work in sprints. However, if you introduce QA in line with the sprint or DevOps in line with the sprint, then you can't really do sprints because you're just going to keep missing because your priorities and your timelines are never going to overlap fully. And if you are watching and you do have experience and you do have thoughts and opinions on this yourself, please feel free. Right. So my point there was, if I include that number there, and this is still ready for planning, it's going to misrepresent that. So there's no value in having that number there. Yeah. How many people come in here thinking Kafka from Final Fantasy VI because my blurry eyes read that? It kind of does rely upon a yeah. It's a useful keyword because a lot of people are in that world these days. It can always be time for a little Magitech mayhem. Anonymous Roth. I don't know. So I know I'm not doing much in the way of coding today, but the problem is I have this dependency PR planning outline, and I do want to figure this out. So let me go into the current version of this, right? So we do have task estimation in here, right? So also Apache missed opportunity, indeed. So the concept has been the same, right? This is the review date, and this was the 22nd of March. So we're only a couple of weeks past due. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to add those requirements into the current version because this is the version I'm using to track the data. Tasks should be estimatable. All right. Create that. And estimations should be visible. Does not want to copy the things. All right. Now this is why the new version, it does improve on this. So now if I hit the this button here, now I can add a task, right? And that's where the new version is a little better because you can see those tasks in screen. So provide estimation field on task. Task edit. Yeah, I really don't like the backlog screen in either version. This version is not much different. So we create that one. You see that just disappears now because why not? And then update task with estimate. Update task with estimate. And that's the backend components, right? So that's that. Now, if I go over to the tasks in this version, you'll see those there. Select status, ready for development. Update task. That's important. It misses those statuses. Is this going to be mobile responsive or make another version for mobile? Another version for mobile if and when that comes about. Because of the nature of what it is I'm trying to do, I don't feel it's a very mobile friendly thing. I think there might be aspects of it that are useful for mobile. I think there might, once we get into notifications and kind of back and forth, I think there's more chance for a mobile version, but I think it will be a separate version. And again, the way this designed, that's perfectly doable as a separate product. That being said, I do want this to scale a bit more responsively in general. Right now, it is kind of mixed bag what you get. I think there is definitely some benefit to having that. Planning, allow estimation of tasks, requirements, estimation should be visible. So I do apologize if there's no coding going on here today. Again, you're more than welcome to ask any questions about that. What do you want to change for mobile? Well, I think so. The long-term vision of this is a little bit more nuanced than I'm even highlighting here. So one of the things that I want to focus heavily on once I've got past this estimations phase is the concept of telling you what has changed and allowing people to understand what is happening in the system. So if I want to look for all client-based projects or client-based planning items or changes to client-based planning items, I want to be allowed to configure notifications and reviews of those things. So one of the concepts, I don't think it shows it very well. I don't think this one has it. No, it doesn't have the planning item dashboard. But one of the ideas is to kind of allow you to see kind of the progress of things or what things have changed that you might care about and do that. So I think that would be the mobile focused aspect of it. It's more telling you things you care about in the system rather than being able to directly do the actual work. I think that would be a very useful mobile aspect. So, if I had a task and as a product manager, I want to know when the development team starts tasking this thing, and I want to be notified via a daily summary, right? The development team tasked out these planning items because I might want to set the review date on this differently. I might want to say, okay, well, now they've moved it up, I can change my review date. I can move that up a little bit further, so it comes back into view on Friday or something like that, right? Because this review date is a product manager set field that allows them to say, here's when I want this to kind of come back into my site, so I know that it's something's changed or that I've got to do more with it. Devs enabling PMs. Devs enabling PMs. No. No. The goal here is very much for the PMs to own everything, and most of the focus of this software is based around product management rather than development. Isn't it better to have connectors for different communication platforms like Slack so they can communicate over internal to import their tickets? Thank you for the follow, you see. Possible. One of the things, this right now says comments. One of the things I want to look into is it able to kind of become discussions so that it's more of a thread-based thing, but maybe can pull in other forms. Meetings, if I can access APIs to get meetings and meeting notes, right? If you can hook up your integration to like your Google Calendar and or get the meeting notes so you can actually have, oh, this meeting occurred and here's the notes for it, and kind of provide visibility and ownership of that so that the things you need to make the decisions are present. That's one of the things we often miss is context, because a conversation's gone on without us, or we weren't present at a meeting and we missed a conversation that said, oh, well, this should, you know, this should appear as a widget on the dashboard, or we should see some other value. So it's oftentimes lost, and I want to try and consolidate those things and provide, you know, an organization isn't going to all of a sudden become really good at communication, but I want to encourage the communication. That's kind of why the focus is where it is right now. And then the ability for anybody to sign up for anything on any item at any level is something that is going to take a while. I do have a simple working version right now, but yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, Geek, where basically pull those notes in and attach them. Say, this meeting occurred on Monday at 3 p.m. Here's the AI summary of it, right? So that the developers could potentially come in and review the summary. And, you know, I know that oftentimes includes some personal stuff, although I have noticed that some of the AI stuff actually removes waffle. It focuses on what happened rather than just people chatting. It might say, oh, they talked about personal stuff for a few minutes. The AI recaps have been pretty good from my experience so far at cutting that stuff out. That's a good idea. Communication being consistent is helpful. Typically, communication style can influence how your software is built. Be interested to see if this tool improves software architecture. Yeah, I mean, it'd be quite rewarding to know it did, but yeah, what I'm trying to do is encourage and facilitate increased visibility and awareness so that a decision on a field being there is understood. And if there's a change in that decision, people can be told about that, right? So if a requirement changes, developers can be notified the requirement changed, by the way. And everyone can see the requirement change. So they say, well, hold on, it was in progress. The requirements changed. What's going on? And people can be alerted to that. And it can also flag potentially, where you can say, well, here's a, you know, an exception has happened on this planning item, which means that it could potentially go off track. So even CEOs could subscribe to, you know, daily summaries of planning items or daily summaries of initiatives, and then be told, you know, 3 planning items were updated, 1 went into in progress, you know, 1 got cancelled, you know, here's what happened. That's kind of what I want to focus on. Should see a total for the tasks appear on the requirements panel. Include estimation field on view side. Update scripts for including estimation on task. Update integration to pull estimation. Update integration to pull estimation value through. again, my tasking here is going to be based upon my experience with the architecture, right? So I'm looking at this from I know that what I'm talking about here is I know I'm going to receive an event for the planning item, right? That's going to include an estimation field now. So this planning item, no, not that task, sorry. This task, not system threading tasks. This one, sorry. This task is going to now have an estimation field. So now I'm going to update the existing task and I'm going to set the estimation value on that, right? So I know what that is. And this is why this is the way it is. So the development team can talk through those pieces. They can get rid of those assumptions. Yes, you might be like, you still want to avoid designing the code, but if your system's consistent, your system's well developed, this becomes easier and easier and easier. So that there's a pattern to the software development practice, right? Most code is not convoluted. It might be convoluted in its overall, but the concept is pretty simple in terms of we have data, it gets from here, we put it in here, it stores. There we go. That's all I'm doing. So how do I store that? So that's why I'm breaking this task down the way I am. I understand what it means. I understand the effort involved. That's the goal. And this should allow any developer to read it and understand the pieces. That's what you should focus on. GraphQL, include estimation view. So the way this works is when I pull data in, I have an update context and a view context, and the view is a GraphQL based system. However, at the database level, I actually am creating views for the data so that I'm able to consolidate everything. The PM in me wants to know what t-shirt size that is. Well, actually, that does bring up a good point. So t-shirt sizing comes from I want to say subject matter experts. I don't mean subject matter experts. Technically experts in the system, right? At this level, the developers should be figuring things out. The developers should have the estimation. The estimation field and view, update GraphQL. To include on task. All right. Let me create that. So the developers are involved at this phase. Now, when we put this planning item in, what point is t-shirt sizing relevant? I don't know there was a kappa there, but that might be something we capture. Although I feel that oftentimes it's taken too literally. I think it should be taken as it's intended, which was a comparison of how much effort do we think it was and how much did it actually turn out to be, so we can actually understand where we were off. So like I said, the patterns here, the patterns of my code are very consistent, right? So I understand what it means so I have on the other stories, on the other tasks, I've created the field for estimation. I've published that field into Kafka. So when I go and edit that task, I save that task, it publishes an integration event. That integration event is Kafka. It goes into Kafka, sorry. And I'm using Kafka for state transfer. I'm not using Kafka for eventing necessarily. I'm not using it for carrying context of why a change was made or how it was made. I'm just saying, by the way, here's the current version of this object. Now, anybody who cares can have this object. And it's up to individual systems to determine what they need to know and how they need to know it. But the source of truth is the tasks component. On the view side, I now know that to receive that, I go to my task receiver. I'm going to have an extra field in here, which is the estimation. I go in here into this code. I change this. I change the relevant tests. That's all kind of assumed. And now I've captured the estimation field. Now on the view side of things, I create a view, or I update the view for the task to include the estimation and make sure that it will come through. So now I can get that. And that's a well understood component of the system. So yeah. Again, if you have any questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, if you're new to the stream, it does look like there are quite a few new people in the stream today. I've been working on this project for over 1.5 years. It is an established project at this point. There's a lot to it, but I am happy to divert and talk through things if you have questions or problems with things. Like if you disagree with how I'm doing something, I want to have an honest conversation. We might not, I might open my eyes and be like, oh, I see the point there. Let me consider that. Or I might be like, that's fine. We disagree on how it's done. But it's useful to test yourself sometimes. It's not always, building in a echo chamber is not always very productive because you will just continue to confirm your own bias, right? But for today, what I'm doing is I'm trying to plan this out. So later on today, what I will do is I'll merge the PR that is stopping me from doing. So I have a previous PR that has some challenges. That's why I'm not doing the development today. And we'll get that merged through. And then tomorrow we'll actually start on this piece. And the reason I'm doing the tasking is to try and help visualize that as I'm working on it, so people can see the goal. Mojo, good morning. So this is a slightly more difficult one, right? So slightly more difficult in that it includes include estimation on requirement. Requirements are, so update requirement view, calculate total estimation of tasks associated with requirement, update UI, to highlight, show total estimation in requirement header panel. So there you go. Okay. So that will show somewhere around here. Like if this is, 3 and 4, that'll be 7, and we'll show it as a nice large number. And we'll play with that. That being said, I've tried to put something here before and it's not gone very well. So we're going to have some fun with CSS there. Being that task. So because of the nature of the way this project is laid out, right? My tasking sometimes best suits this layer, this. So creating a task to update the UI often makes more sense because obviously I'm touching 2 different projects, right? The client is actually a completely separate project than everything else, right? So you can break things down that way. Yes. CSS does not normally go very well for me either. So it's sometimes better for me to not do this piece, right? So if we remove that, And go back to the planning item. Because if you think about how the teams work, how the work is broken down, I could have a team just doing show estimation total on requirement, right? Update UI. So this is that actual task. Now that's a separate PR. That's a separate commit. That's completely independent, and you can test that and work with that without the API doing it. Right. Zons, good morning. Doing good. How are you? Right. And similarly, show estimation. Now, here, actually, I'm thinking about it. Show estimation total on requirement. If I change that to be show estimations for requirement, right? We have update UI requirement panel to show total estimation, update task to show estimation, right? Now that makes a bit more sense. So we have 3 tasks because you do both tasks in one go, and they both be done as one PR, and that would be independent. Now they have some crossover dependencies, but yeah. Need to add a message queue system to my product, but good. And job system. Fun. Message queues are fun. Okay, I gotta know. Did I spell that right? Estimable. Estimable. It is a word. Possible to estimate. Estimable assets on estimable distance. Not estimatable. Why is estimatable not a real English word? The able suffix is productive, and dictionaries very often do not include words which can be deduced from their constituent parts. That was an argument on Stack Exchange. What technology are you looking to use for your queue? So, like I said, if you're interested in asking questions, if you want to know more about this project, you are more than welcome to join the Discord. If you want to chat about this off stream, I'm happy to do so. I'm also happy to share some of the code. There are a few open source components to it, but the general goal is to build this out as a real product and hopefully release it. Coming up in the next couple of weeks, the aim is to get this version deployed to my test system. And at that point, anybody will be able to sign up for it if they choose to. But we will have the ability to restrict subscriptions, so we can actually remove a subscription if we feel that it's not productive. That's kind of one of the key facets, is having the ability to switch things off. Just thinking as your functions via queue right now. Ideally, I think Rabbit or Kafka would work better, so there isn't a vendor lock. Just thinking though. Just thinking through. Yeah. Well, depending on how the complexity, the Azure queues work pretty well. Rabbit and Kafka come with more configuration and setup. Ultimately, if you abstract it enough, it should be relatively simple. The only acceptable version of queue is John Delancey. He's an awesome queue. Okay. So where do we go from here? Well, the next stage is the actual development pieces, right? So we're going to develop this out over the next couple of streams, get those estimation fields in. So the goal will be, basically the workflow will be, I go in here once a task has been added. It's not, once you assign it to a sprint, it disappears from here. There's meetings me. I'll address that in a second. And then what we'll do is provide an estimation field in here. Again, decimal to 2 decimal places. If you put 3 or you put, 3.5 or, whatever you do, the estimation is your own scheme. It does not necessarily mean points. It means estimation. So you'll be able to include that field in here, and that will then, it's funny, all that work seems like a lot compared to what it's actually going to yield, because what it's going to show is a number will show next to here and a total for those numbers will show here. That's it. Does meeting mean meeting notes? You should add a section for decisions so that people don't keep repeating the same convo over and over again. It's not a bad idea. So the meetings, the intention there is to keep reminding me to try and do that research. The concept would be that a meeting could be assigned to a planning item depending on how we do it. I'm not quite sure about the technology components there, but the general goal would be you could include it like Google Calendar or something, and the meetings for this thing, if you titled them correctly, would show in here. And then the notes, if we get AI notes attached, then you could actually make that very useful, because it would show you the meeting notes, summary notes of that meeting. As for decisions, I kind of feel that comes out in the requirements, right? The requirements should be adapted and changed over time. This comments is meant for discussions as well. I really feel this should be discussions rather than comments, and more thread based than just a single outlying comment. Yeah. But if this is not possible, those meeting notes could also be attached. Right? They could be attachments that are PDF or whatever. But got to get some of these pieces in place so that people can kind of see the vision, push back on the design, and see how they feel. But it is coming along. I feel we're making progress. Things are looking a little better. Again, the goal of this, once this estimation piece is in place, the goal will be to get this deployed to the Liquid Sky test system, which consists of a AMD mini PC right now, and then allow people to play more with this. So yeah, that is very much the goal. But no development specifically done today, but I think this was worthwhile. I think it was worthwhile going through. Let's just add that task. So task estimation, we want to include these tasks. Why is the planning item not showing here? That's something's not quite right there. Include estimation. That's why that's not showing there. So we need to do include estimation, on view side, right? We need to include estimation on requirement. Right. And finally, we need to show the estimations for a requirement. Now, overall, there's a few pieces of work here. However, I feel that it is achievable in a stream, which, if you are not aware, is about 2 hours long. Update task with estimate. This currently deployed version has a bug where it doesn't set the status, and if I set it to the sprint before I set the status, that task will disappear into the ether. Oh, now we do the pop-up. Okay. Okay, so they're there. So now we can assign them to the prepare for next release sprint. I think this backlog screen in general is the reason I'm not messing with it too much right this second. Like, it looks a little different in this version. However, I feel that there is a lot of filtering and sorting that needs to go on. I think there's some sort of team concept. Well, teams as a concept needs to be introduced so that we can actually group tasks by a team. And that way we can drop enough. Thanks again for the shout out. Enjoy your day. Apex, thank you very much for coming and hanging out. Thank you for the conversation. Appreciate it. Appreciate the feedback. And have a great day. Okay, so now we have these tasks in here. This is actually what we are building the software using, right? I'm tracking the changes that I'm making in here. That's why I just added them into 2 places, right? This version is the development version of the data, right? So you can see there's a lot of fluff in here. But I added this because it helps represent the concepts and talk through the workflow at the same time. That being said, it is 9 a.m. Unfortunately, I am not paid to do this. I am not a full-time streamer. So they're in there. Tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Eastern, we will begin adding this feature in there. So we'll start the development of this. We'll start with a task with estimate. Yeah, we'll start with updating the task for the estimates. We'll start on the server side of things. From there, we'll work through these other tasks. Once we've got estimations in, we're at a point where I think this is a useful tool to any team looking to pick it up as a test. So this is not intended to be Jira, by the way. This is definitely not intended to be not Jira. It's definitely not intended to be Jira, but it's also not intended to be Trello. It's not really built for a single person to be doing something. So it's going to make testing a little bit rough in the beginning until it's feasible enough for a team to use. But that's for another day. So I'm going to raid out today. Don't forget, if you have any questions, thoughts, opinions you want to share, you want to continue the conversation off the stream, you're more than welcome to join the Discord. I want to, as always, One Lion streams Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays right now. He's a fantastic streamer and a fantastic developer. He does my shoutouts for me and is a great support because I am very bad at thinking about shoutouts and stuff. So I do apologize for no coding today. The coding will resume tomorrow. We'll get into some unit testing. We'll get into some workflows with APIs and Kafka. Yeah. So let's go raid Clayman. Clayman is developing an awesome game. It just looks fantastic. I don't know what category it necessarily falls in, but be warned, most of the streams I join into do not have the same language as I do. So sometimes I don't swear, other streams do. Nice. So action combat. There we go. So let's go raid Clayman. I will be back tomorrow. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you very much for the active conversation. I really do appreciate it, and I hope you've got something from this. So take care, all. Have a great day. Thank you very much. Bye.